नमस्कार। रसोई के रहस्य के फेस्टिवल्स ऑफ इंडिया के नए एपिसोड में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज का एपिसोड बेहद ही स्पेशल है, बहुत स्पेशल एपिसोड है। कैसे और क्यों हम अभी जानेंगे।
रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम, रसोई के रहस्य आओ मिलकर खोले हम।
भारत एक ऐसा देश है जहां पर इतनी विविधता है। There's so much diversity and beauty in diversity in a country like India. With the number of states come those many languages, those many dialects, those many lifestyles, and that much food. There is nothing more beautiful than celebrating this diversity in one place. Everything put together in one space. You must be thinking, where is this one place where we find all of this? I won't let you wait for too long. There is nothing more special than an armed forces campus where communities abound. The sense of community is perhaps at its absolute best. People come together from all sorts of communities, all sorts of backgrounds, and live as one, which is ultimately the basis and the foundation of our country. My guest today is someone very special. She is special because she comes from a background in the armed forces, having grown up in an Air Force campus where her father was an officer. And she has imbibed this entire culture within herself, within everything she does, whether it is her volunteering work where she teaches people, young kids to, learn spoken English, whether it is being an emotional anchor to people suffering from leukemia, or whether it is her work in various women's groups. She has used what she herself calls her scientific temperament to make all of this happen. She is here and is going to share with us her life growing up in an Air Force campus and how the sense of community has made her the person she is today. So I'm really keen and very excited to know what happens in an armed forces campus when they celebrate festivals, when they celebrate community and celebrate the unity and diversity of our country. Let me welcome my guest, Sandhya Venugopal Godey. Hi Sandhya, welcome to Rasoi ke Rahasya. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Namaskar, and thank you so much, Payal, for having me here. It is my privilege to be part of your show, and I consider myself lucky to be featuring on this and representing the armed forces community for the first time, I think, on your show.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's that's why I'm so excited about it, because until I spoke with you about it, it wasn't even anywhere, on my radar that there was something like this that we totally needed to speak about and to celebrate. So to begin with, I'd like for you to share with us, what was it like, Sandhya, growing up in an Air Force campus with all those people and all the various colors of life and community?
So, Payal, I think it depends on how you look at it. We had everything and we had nothing. We didn't have a home for unlimited period of time. We had temporary homes. So sometimes it could be as short as 5 months where my father stayed in Hyderabad, or it could be 4 years when we stayed in Pune. Mm-hmm. Or it could be 3 years of Bangalore, 2 years of Agra, 1.5 years of Srinagar. So it depends. And so for us, change was something that was constant in our lives. And we just took it in our stride. We lived in 3 bedroom bungalows. Mm-hmm. And we have stayed a family of 5, my parents and 3 of us siblings, in just one room. We have stayed, and I think one step better than that one room was 2 rooms, where one room was, of course, half living room, because socializing is a must in defense forces. It is part of our lives. So one half of my parents' room was converted into a living room. Everything with boxes. The settee was the box, the table was a box, their bed was a box. So everything. And the partitions were again boxes piled, I think. So one half was the living room, the other half was their bedroom. Yes. And our room was 3 children, 1 live-in maid, the kitchen, the store, the dining, the ironing table, the study table, and I think play area also, if I remember.
Is that
And
adjustment or what?
No, it was just something we just took. Okay, ठीक है, अभी पुणे में till we get a quarter ऐसे ही रहना है. And we were not the only ones doing it. There were World War II barracks that they had converted because a whole unit had moved from Jodhpur. तो ठीक है, 10 families ऐसे रह रहे हैं, so हम भी हैं, वो भी हैं, सब एक साथ हैं. So we really didn't think it was unusual. अरे कैसे, we just did it. Yes. I think Nike would have been so proud of us. We just did it.
Absolutely.
And then when the houses came, we moved to houses, and every few years we changed schools, we changed neighbors, we changed lifestyles, we changed cities, of course, school. And it was just, but the one thing constant in all this change was the support you get from the community. Like when you move to a new house, a new campus, within half an hour of you know, getting to the new house, one auntie would come and say, hello, I'm Mrs. So-and-so, I'm your neighbor, and here's some chai, and here's some nashta, and here are all newspapers, because you'll need the newspapers to line every cupboard, every shelf.
Wonderful. Amazing.
Yeah, you don't travel with old newspapers, because ऐसे इतना सारा सामान आप बक्से में ला रहे हैं, तो old newspapers तो आप लाओगे नहीं. So your neighbors turn up with this. And then the next couple of days, you will get maybe a Gujarati lunch, a Punjabi dinner, South Indian breakfast. बड़ा buffet type चलता रहता है वहाँ पे till you settle in. And then of course वो change चलता रहता है. You do that to your neighbors, to new people in the unit or new people on the campus. And चाहे खुशी हो, चाहे गम हो, चाहे त्योहार हो, सब एक साथ मनाते हैं. And you know, while I was listening to you introducing the topic, you know, you said we do a community celebration, and I was thinking, oh my God, what will people think if I say, you know, we did the celebration in a mess, because our clubhouse, or what you would call, was always called a mess. And I just wonder why it was called a mess. It was pretty organized, very decent, very well set up, well-trained staff. पर उसको हर जगह mess ही बुलाते
I know, seriously. यहाँ पर भी, I mean, tiffin centers also called tiffin mess. Actually, this is an interesting thing. ढूंढना पड़ेगा. What if I did it end up being called a mess?
Probably it used to be a mess. I don't know. But yeah, so the mess was our adda for everybody. The men went there for a drink. We children went there to play, watch television, because हर घर में television नहीं होता था.
सही.
तो something important हम लोग वहाँ चले जाते थे TV देखने, या even watch black and white movies. And sometimes we would even watch Krishi Darshan because we wanted to watch TV.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
There was a wonderful library there, and some of the messes in different cities, they are beautiful, you know, pieces of art.
Wow.
I remember in Pune there was this beautiful tapestry work. वो लगता था painting है, पर आप देखो तो embroidery है. It was, I still remember, it was some pigeons, light grey color. There was orchids. It was a beautiful thing.
Amazing.
So that was where we celebrated most occasions, and that was our, like, the ladies would have their ladies club meetings in the mess. So the mess was the place to go for everything.
Amazing, no? How the circle of life is. It's truly simply a circle of life. It just keeps going on and on wherever you are. Something like exactly, and you said it so beautifully. The change was truly the only constant.
Yes. And that is something, it trained us for life. Today, so many people ask me, you know, like, अरे तुम्हारे घर में renovation चल रहा है, how do you manage? करने को क्या है? Like, ठीक है, जहाँ place मिलता है वहाँ चूल्हा लगा देते हैं. We have always one room that is working, so वहाँ सो जाते हैं. One bathroom that's functional. So, like, I mean, it's no big deal. And people find it, you know, they think I'm oversimplifying things, but in my mind, it's very clear. जो है उसके साथ काम चलाओ, because that was how we were brought up. So
some values, I think, that are, you know, part of, become part of your being, the whole thing of survival. And it's not simply survival. You know, the beauty of it, as I listen to you speak, what comes to mind is it wasn't simply survival. It was actually living life to the fullest.
Absolutely. We didn't feel we didn't have, or we were forgoing something. Jitna hai, utne mein we did everything. There's nothing that we didn't do because of any one thing. We did everything, whether we lived in a city, we lived in a small town, we lived in a big house, in a small house, whether our school was thatched tents which would leak during the rains, or it was a big building. For us, nothing stopped ever. Everything was.
That's the beauty of this whole kind of existence and the kind of training that and the kind of, I think it's just the foundation that it gives you is so wonderful. So what was it like when, India is a land of festivals, India is a land of many holidays for various reasons and sometimes for no reason at all. So when you were looking at a celebration of a festival, since, there were so many communities, people, so many different people living there, what was that like?
So, like I mentioned, the mess was our go-to place for everything.
Yeah.
So usually, whatever festival it was, whether it's Christmas or Holi or Diwali, the bigger festivals, there would always be a community celebration. Like for Diwali, there would always be fireworks on the edge of the runway, and we all would go there and then watch the fireworks, then come back home, go to each other's homes, greet each other, exchange sweet boxes. And then after you finish all this socializing, usually smaller groups would meet together, maybe the unit. Again, a campus could have several different units stationed there.
Right.
So each unit is like, again, a sub-family unto itself. So maybe the unit people meet again. The ladies will organize a potluck or maybe somebody is hosting if, it depends. So everything is community-based. In fact, I don't remember ever celebrating anything by ourselves. ठीक है, हम घर बैठे हैं, सिर्फ पापा मम्मी और हम 3 बच्चे. I can't remember any celebration like that. Christmas especially was geared towards the children. And every year it was a suspense as to how Santa Claus was going to arrive. So he arrived atop a fire engine one time. Once he came in a jeep that was decked with balloons. And one time they put us all on a bus, took us to the runway, and we stood in the middle of the runway, and a huge transport aircraft had Santa
Amazing.
in the door. They had the door open, and we could actually see Santa flying so low, and we were thinking, oh my God, is he going to parachute from there? All kinds of weird things. And it was just that excitement. And then all of us would go back to the mess, have a fancy dress competition, have various competitions for the kids, and have cake. And then if you had friends who were Christians, which was of course very natural because every campus would have somebody, we children would go for midnight mass with them and have coffee in the middle of the night. Having coffee in the middle of the night was a treat for us.
Yes.
दूध पीते बच्चे थे. So
एक तो बीच रात में जग रहे हैं. That's also such a grown-up thing to do, to be awake in the middle of the night.
Yes. So we were so excited कि हम बीच रात में जगे हैं, घर के बाहर हैं, and coffee पी रहे हैं.
अरे वाह.
So
this is like a rite to passage, ना? जैसे अब ये नहीं किया तो क्या किया types.
Exactly. Then Holi also was the same thing. Puri Toli, the Toli would keep getting bigger and bigger as we went from house to house. I remember my mother would lock herself in because she was totally anti-Holi and throw the key outside and say, तुमको घर जब आना हो, तुम दरवाजा open the door and come. Don't tell anybody I'm at home. तो हम लोग तो मतलब सुबह के I think 10 बजे निकलते थे. पूरा campus Toli बन के, एकदम भूत बन के. We used to come back home after having lunch in the mess and then तुमको पता है वो दीदी ने ना भांग पिया है. So that was the highlight of Holi for us.
And also there must be lots of luka-chupi, lot of aakho mi, and lots of those kind of things that must be part of the entire celebration.
Yes. And every house we went to, the uncles and aunties would, have something, a treat for us, or they would dunk us in the water tub or something to make us a little more excited and get us a little more dirty, I think. फिर वैसे गीले कपड़े के साथ मेस गए, वहाँ खाना लगता था, खाना खा के फिर पता नहीं शाम के 4-5 बजे आई थिंक हम लोग घर लौटते थे. And mummy is giving us dirty looks, dirty बच्चे, dirty कपड़े.
And ऊपर से घर गंदा, घर के अंदर मत आना, घर गंदा हो जाएगा.
Yes.
But the khana that was prepared in the mess, was it a special meal या वो regular खाना होता था? Or for festivals, was it, did they cook a special meal?
Yes, festivals were definitely special. But I'm talking of the 80s, 70s and 80s when I was a schoolgirl. And tab, I think even having gulab jamun was a treat.
Oh yes,
having suji ka halwa was a treat. Having cake was a treat.
Ekdam.
So having just these were not things that you found every day on the menu.
Yes.
A regular menu would have something like tadka dal, maybe rajma, maybe tinde ki sabzi, lauki ki sabzi with roti. And agar aapko usko, you sometimes we would just go to the mess to eat this, and I can still get the taste of the dal when I think of it.
Yeah.
It was just plain arad dal with tadka, and usko they used to call it extra messing. Matlab, I think they used to charge 1 rupee or 1.5 rupee. So butter mein onions ko fry karke they would add to the dal.
Yes.
So that was extra messing. So I remember my dad would always say, nahi, he would call the waiter and say ki, nahi, extra messing mein butter ka tadka lagao. So, and just eating that dal with roti was a treat for us.
Yes,
and anda bhujia. Anda bhujia was, of course, very, very famous. So that was a treat. And special occasions would have, biryani or, like I said, suji ka halwa or gulab jamun.
Right. So depending ke kaun sa festival. Yeah, I think kai baar it used to probably also be dependent on उस पर्टिकुलर मौसम में उस पर्टिकुलर फेस्टिवल में क्या वेजिटेबल्स हैं क्या चीजें स्पेशल मिल रही हैं आई थिंक डिड इट एवर हैपन कि सीजनल वेजिटेबल्स लाइक गाजर का हलवा फॉर इंस्टेंस विंटर्स फॉर अ स्पेशल
Oh yes, I remember in Agra they used to make amazing gajar ka halwa because we were in the north. And there was also a time I remember when mess, I think in Shillong, served us boiled tinda with noodles. And they said, sir, मतलब सब्जी नहीं आया है सिटी से, तो सिर्फ टिंडा था, नूडल्स था, ठीक है, ओके, बच्चों खा जाओ. तो हम खा गए उसको, but we have never quite forgiven the cook for giving us boiled tinda and noodles.
Just imagine, gosh, sacrilege. but फिर वही तो बात है, देखो आज के दिन में so many years later, you remember the boiled tinda and the noodles above most anything else, I'm sure.
Yes, like if I had normal noodles, मेरे को याद कहाँ रहता, like I wouldn't even be talking about it.
वही तो it is just stood apart in its own uniqueness and it's, in the jugaad of the entire meal.
Yes. Talking of jugaad, we were posted to Bangalore and we had just one room. So, of course, we had very limited luggage. Our luggage was in storage and we just had, I think, a couple suitcases. Still, we got better accommodation. And I had to join college. I had got admission in Mount College in Bangalore. Ab mujhe jana tha college and mummy didn't, we had no kitchen in that room, of course. So we told the mess wale ki bhaiya humko packed lunch chahiye har roj college ke liye. He said, हाँ baby, everybody was a baby incidentally, irrespective of your age. Yes. If you were not married, you were baby. So baby ke liye khana chahiye. हाँ सब हो जाएगा. So baby went to collect the lunch. Newspaper में roti and anda omelette. I don't know. आजकल के parents wouldn't think of feeding their
seriously,
kids.
Newsprint and poison.
Print. But I don't know. I survived. I would take lunch like that every day, and then of course till we got our temporary accommodation, and then of course I had to take a tiffin box with whatever my mom packed in it. And despite being a South Indian, my mom calls me, she says, तुम्हारा रूह जो है, तुम्हारी आत्मा जो है नॉर्थ इंडियन है, बस तुम्हारा बॉडी साउथ इंडियन है. Because I loved it till today. I will eat rotis every day, but I do not eat like eating rice and sambar and those South Indian things that much.
तो फिर definitely this is कुछ थोड़ा सा कहीं का mutation है ये.
So once, and I definitely didn't like idlis while I was growing up.
Right.
अब मैं शादीशुदा हूँ, खुद खाना बनाती हूँ, तो I'd rather eat the idli than, make something else for myself. So जब भी इडली बनता था, I would forget the tiffin box at home. हमेशा, I don't know ऐसे कैसे होता था, हमेशा भूल जाती थी. So once when I was in class, हमारा जो assistant था घर पे, I see him standing in the classroom, doorway of the classroom, and I'm saying, चमोली यहाँ क्यों आए हो? Baby, आप tiffin box भूल गई क्या?
With idlis.
With idlis. Up now there were two things there. एक तो उसने मुझे बेबी बोला. I was in the 12th standard. Imagine. And then he brought these idlis. तो I said, ठीक है, मैं तुम्हारा घर पे जाके I'll talk to you. तुम निकलो
खबर लेती हूँ तुम्हारी आके घर पे.
मैं तुम्हारी खबर घर पे लेती हूँ, तुम निकलो, बॉक्स वहाँ छोड़ दो. And then everybody said, अरे इडली. We were posted in Agra at that time. So तब से I never forgot my box at home.
Yes, because we knew there were many others who would partake of it very happily.
Yes, I would eat paratha and bhindi from somebody's box or chole and paratha, and they would eat the idlis. बहुत अच्छा सेटिंग हो गया हमारा।
वही फायदा, हर चीज का कुछ ना कुछ होता ही है ना।
बिल्कुल, वो बस फायदा ढूंढने का देर है। So
it's such a, I mean, uniqueness to this entire thing. And if you, I think from what I remember growing up, of a few friends who I had were from armed forces campuses and things, there was a lot of awe and a lot of respect. We felt like they were people who were different from us in so many ways, because like you said, थोड़े देर रहते हैं and then they go away, and you make such good friendships and people then just simply go away, and they bring to you such a wealth of information and knowledge, and the ability to adapt, exactly like you said, and that excitement of knowing कि आर्मी में है, एयरफोर्स में है, नेवी में है, wow, क्या करते होगे तुम लोग, how must it be, so there was this entire and of course a deep-seated respect for the fact that everyone served in the armed forces and were responsible for the security and so many things of our country. But to you, how did it feel? Was it a different, was there anything different when you interacted with, people in the school and things like that?
So our schools were always on our campuses. We were away from the city usually. So everybody was from the Air Force, whether they were officers' children or they were airmen children. But everybody was from the Air Force, except when we went to schools that were in civil areas. Like once,
there would have been a Kendriya Vidyalaya or something over there then.
Yes, of course. I'm a Kendriya Vidyalaya student, as are my sisters. So wherever we went, unless we attended a Kendriya Vidyalaya in a civil locality, because father was posted on deputation to some other place or some other company, like that. So I'd like to mention here, like festivals. हमारे घर में बहुत ही कम festivals we celebrated, because my parents were not religious people as such. My mom had her own little puja that she had set up, but none of us really figured कि क्या हो रहा है. कभी पायसम खिला दिया तो पता चला कि हाँ भाई आज कोई पूजा है. So we didn't really get involved. Neither did she force us, because I don't think we showed much inclination towards religion. We would like to read about Vivekananda and those kind of things, but religion, spirituality, I think was somewhere attracted us more than religion.
Absolutely.
Religious practices.
Yes.
So, but having said that, we had neighbors, of course, who would celebrate things in religious, कभी कृष्णाष्टमी तो वो झूला बनाया पूरा उसका, that scenery, एक पहाड़, एक झूला, and then कृष्ण जी का छोटा सा एक झूला. So we loved actually going and celebrating होलिका दहन. तो वो लोग बुलाते थे, ठीक है आज रात होलिका दहन होगा, आ जाओ. तो हम लोग चले जाते थे, वो पूरी उसमें रेवड़ी डालते थे, and that puffed rice, and we would partake in कृष्णाष्टमी, stay up the whole night कि आज कृष्ण भगवान का जन्म होने वाला है. And Air Force campuses are so safe that I don't think we really worried ki, like if suppose I went to my neighbor's house for Krishnashtami, at midnight I would walk back to my house and there was no fear ki are beach raat mein ek akeli ladki types,
Absolutely.
They were the safest places. So I have celebrated a lot of festivals like that with my friends, families, whether it's Eid. In fact, it is through our Air Force like that I know ki, on Bakrid, they share 1/3 of the mutton.
Meat, they do.
Yes,
they do.
With friends. So, in fact, here in Vizag, I keep telling all my friends, यार Bakrid है, कहाँ हमको mutton नहीं आ रहा है. So, नहीं, हम लोग, because I'm so used to that, कि Bakrid में थोड़ा बहुत mutton तो घर आना ही आना है.
बिल्कुल.
And things don't work like that in civil. And every time I say civil, my husband reminds me that now I'm a civilian. But
yes, you're no longer. Those days of glory are past now.
Yeah, but I don't quite agree with him. So I said, no, once you're a defense kid, you'll die a defense kid. Nothing in between will change.
That's also very true. But here also, it depends. It's not so easy. Like you said, that's what I'm saying. The entire sense of community and all the communities being together, it was just a matter of sharing things with one another. Yahan par, only if you have friends, only if you're living in, a place where maybe a neighbor is celebrating Bakrid and is going to give you whatever. ये सब चीजें देखने को नहीं मिलती यहाँ पर. That's the beauty of where you have been and where you've grown up.
Yeah, and also a campus is a great equalizer. At every point, I don't know, it's a system that is built into the whole culture. There is something called Barakhana. which is held after, like on Air Force Day, or there's a big parade, or when the chief of Air Force staff comes visiting, or when the, commandant comes or something. They have these things called Barakhana, where I think children were never taken to the Barakhana because it was usually for the men, and on some occasions the ladies, wives of the officers.
Right.
So where the men matlab the airmen, not the officers. So the officers and the airmen would sit together and eat. So that was something, I think, where it is, without making much ado about it, they just do it and show it that everybody's equal.
It was done. It was simply done. No eyebrows raised, no fingers pointed. Why only the men and things like those are just some things that are just done.
Yeah,
I've heard
no
of the
speeches. Yes. So that was something. So we would always ask Papa, so Bada Khana mein bada kya hai? Do they make something big? Or what is bada? So he says, Bada Khana isliye hai ki bahut sare log wahan pe baith ke khate hain, like
as
together.
Simple as that. As basic as that.
Yes.
And we sit and look for connotations, and we read between the lines, looking for things between the lines when there's absolutely nothing.
Absolutely. So he would just come and say, "Nahi, bada khana isliye hai ki log, it's a big gathering and everybody. So it's just a common menu, and there's no separate seating for the officers, and aisa kuch nahi hai. And mostly I don't think they would insist on, like I think in the officers when they have ceremonial meals, like dining in nights. There is very strict protocol about how much time you can eat each course. And I remember my mom complaining once, the prawns were so yummy, but हमने आधा prawn खाया, उसने plate ही उठा लिया. Because there once the chief guest, whoever it could be, the air chief or visiting air chief or the president of some other country, when the chief finishes, that course is cleared. So उन्होंने जैसे छुरी कांटा रखा, that course is cleared.
Okay.
So some people are aware of that, and they kind of, moderate their speed to match that. But then some people are oblivious to some things, I think. So my mom, I still remember that. She says, the prawn was so yummy, but usne plate nikal liya mera.
That's what they say. Ceremonial things up sab वैसे ही है. Like I remember reading somewhere that even when you went to, the house of the palaces of Maharajas for dinner, when they entertained dignitaries, especially Rajasthan का मेरे को एक reference याद है. Okay, the minute, while you're eating, but the minute, let's say the host sat back on his chair with his back touching the back of the chair. Matlab, that was that.
That was that.
Immediately, सामान clear होना शुरू हो जाता था टेबल पे से. So you had to keep your eye on the Maharaja or the host and see कि, कहीं ये पीछे तो नहीं हो रहे हैं मेरा खाना खत्म होने से पहले.
Yeah.
So in all of this, how did your own love for food develop? You've mentioned already that you are a North Indian at soul, and in your love for food is primarily North Indian, or let's say not South Indian.
Yes.
So इसमें कैसे develop, and so how would you think you are looking at things today? How did this entire experience develop your love for food or your habits where food is concerned? So
before I got married, at home for us food was never set menu. Mummy ka man kiya, so some days it was Chinese, and I remember she would say कि celery आएगा घर पे तभी Chinese बनेगा. She was very strict about it. And या फिर कभी, I remember we would have on full moon days, we would sit out in the garden and eat what we called an English dinner. What was English dinner? Soup, cutlets and bread. मतलब मिर्ची लगने की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं थी तब. तो हम लोग बाहर बैठ के अंधेरे just in moonlight खा लेते थे ये सब.
Nice.
But for us, it was like a night picnic, and there were no lights, so we would just use the moonlight. And मतलब soup खाने में तो कोई problem नहीं है, bread and cutlet खाने में भी कोई problem नहीं है.
Correct.
So, but for us, it was a treat.
Yeah.
So mummy's cooking chana, rajma, and the day she cooks pulsu, which is a very typical Andhra dish. हमारे पेट में दर्द होता था या फिर सर दर्द होता था. So ठीक है. Can I eat bread and egg today?
So the influences were very strong from the साथ वाले आंटी का घर and the सामने वाले uncle का घर.
Yes, but that was me. My sisters, both of them, at least one sister, she loves eating her dahi chawal and all that stuff. I think there was something about me that wasn't conforming to my family rules. But so I think when I got married, and I got married into a very typical Andhra family, where they had torai fry and bhindi fry and sambar or chicken made in a certain way. And so then I have to share this. The day I came from Delhi after I got married, my parents also accompanied us back here to Vizag because there was a reception in Vizag. So that day morning, hum log uthe, so my father-in-law says, "Acha, tumko khana banana aata hai?" And my father promptly jumps to my defense. Yes, she can cook. So then my father-in-law said, "Oh, so what are you going to cook for us today?" So my father turns to me and says, "Why don't you go and bake a cake?" That was my idea of cooking back then. So,
and how was that received?
I think my father-in-law just tried checking his ears whether he heard right, and then decided, "ठीक है, नहीं बहू है, चलो इसको रहने देते हैं. इसका father भी ऐसे ही है. His daughter can make cake and she knows cooking." But then it resulted in me learning to cook, because if I wanted to eat rajma, I had to make it myself. If I wanted to make cake, I had to do it myself. And so now people say I cook different cuisines very well, and I think it all stems from that fact that I was used to eating so many different cuisines. And when we came to Vizag, it was not such a well-developed city, very limited eating options outside. So I had to make whatever I had to make at home. There's always something good in everything that happens.
Absolutely. And I think there are so many learning experiences. It's just a matter of allowing your mind to sort of, take you there and go with it and see what happens. Pasand aaya, theek hai to theek hai, nahi hai to na sahi. I mean, what else can you do? You can't do. You just
अगर
leave
नहीं
it
पसंद आया, कुछ करते हैं इसके बारे में. Like, let's do something about it.
That's another way of looking at it. So out of this entire thing, what today is your favorite food, and what is the recipe that you would be sharing with us, with our listeners?
Yeah. So like I said, recipes or menus back then were very simple compared to today. Today you have these elaborate dishes that even, chefs in our messes cook, like they have different cuisines. But something that was a real treat for us because it involved so many ingredients to go in, and back then, like, there was nothing store bought. Very little was store bought. Whatever you had to do, you had to do it. So trifle pudding was one such dish.
Oh, lovely.
It was so colorful, it was so filling, and it had so many different textures in it. It had the smoothness of custard, the crunchiness of fruits, the crackle of pounded toffee that we would put on top, the bright red jelly in between, and then, of course, the cake that added the
and the burst of flavors when you put the first bite into your mouth. It was a burst of flavors
and burst of textures. It's the cake vying with the fruit, vying with the toffee. So that was a recipe, and I have helped aunties, like every time by turn, each unit would host one of the ladies club events. And once you're a little older, आजकल बच्चों से पूछना पड़ता है कि बेटी, would you like to help this so and so? हाँ, कुछ नहीं था. Your time and effort was volunteered, बेझिझक by your parents. जाके उस आंटी को help करो, जाके इस uncle, he wants this. या उस बच्चे को तुम देखभाल करो, हम लोग बाहर जा रहे हैं. So like unpaid labor. There's so many times I have gone and helped aunties assemble trifle pudding. So first we would bake the sponge cake, then set the jelly, cut the fruits, then pound the custard. Toffees, make the custard, cool it, and then assemble all the layers. So that way, you learned how to make cake in the process. You learned how to make custard. You know what size of fruit was needed to be cut for trifle pudding, because not all fruits, all dishes require the same size and thickness.
True. Yeah.
So evenly sized apple pieces, I remember. Then the apple pieces and the banana pieces had to be of the same size. And then there were some orange segments that went in. So then we would chop all the vegetables, chop all the fruits, keep it aside, let it drain a bit so that the excess, juices don't. Then sponge cake, of course, equal quantities of maida, sugar. Then we used to use dalda actually. I think these days it's a no-no, but we would use dalda in those days.
Oh yes, of course. I remember growing up looking at my mom cooking a dalda cake, which today people look at and say, oh God, how can you eat vanaspati?
And there were no electric whisks those times. So we had those egg beaters जो हाथ से हमको घुमाना पड़ता था.
So, right. Spring
if
beaters.
I had, no, it was like a
अच्छा वो वाले
beater?
वो जो wheel
गोल-गोल
वाला
घुमाना
जिसको रोटेट
पड़ता था.
करते थे.
हाँ.
स्टैंड लेकर
So
हाथ से रोटेट करते हैं उसको.
Yes, I had tremendously toned arms thanks to that.
Okay.
So cake बनाते थे. While the cake was baking, we would do the other, set the jelly, everything. Those days I think there were different compositions. So the jelly would take a couple hours to freeze. Then उसमें में cake आता था. Cake को ठंडा करो, उसको slice करो, then line a dish and then assemble, cake, उसके ऊपर fruit, उसके ऊपर custard, उसके ऊपर jelly, फिर से cake, उसके ऊपर fruit, उसके ऊपर custard, उसके ऊपर jelly, and then the top layer I remember would be whipped cream, and we used to get those hard boiled toffees in different colors. उसको हम लोग pound करते थे to a nice crunchy powder. And that and biscuits, उसको भी powder करते थे, glucose biscuits, and then top it with that, freeze it, rather chill it till the auntie would take it the next day or something to the meeting.
Lovely.
So that trifle pudding always reminds me of ladies' clubs meetings, which I never attended, of course, because
yes,
I was
of course.
not a lady.
You were just the assistant, the free help.
I was the bonded labor. So but it always reminds me of those days when, I would help this auntie and that auntie with that, and she would, and sharing of information of recipes was such a joy, it was a pride that किसी ने आपसे रेसिपी पूछा, आपने बोल दिया. आजकल मतलब रेसिपी पूछे तो आधे इंग्रेडिएंट्स भी नहीं बताते.
आजकल competition, the sense of competition is very high. Everyone wants to be better than the other person. What can you say?
Yeah. But then there's also Google to help you, so you don't
absolutely
really need to go
yes, and you can take your pick. There'll be 50 recipes, 50 versions of one recipe, so you can choose. This is my favorite chef. मैं इसकी recipe बनाऊंगी, उसकी नहीं बनाऊंगी. There are those options also.
There is a quick version, a vegan version, high calorie version.
Yes, of course. Let's not even go there because that will just leave you wondering कि हम कहाँ आ गए हैं.
Yeah. So life was very good. Life was a big learning lesson. Life was an adventure.
So you're going to be sharing the recipe. Of course, we know that you've told us what needs to be done. So specifics, you will give us the recipe ka specifics so I can put it in the description.
Yes, I will do that.
Because it'll be easier since there are so many ingredients and so many different assemblies. I mean, so many different things that will go in. तो यहाँ पर समझ में नहीं आएगा. So I think आप अगर हमको दे देंगे तो हम description में डाल देंगे, so it becomes easy for the reader or the listener to get all the elements together. And
yes, I will do that.
Assembly तो आपने बता ही दिया है, so assembly will be relatively simple then.
Yeah.
We look forward to that. This has been so completely interesting, Sandhya, and it's made me smile right through to think of कहाँ जिंदगी लेकर जाती है and where life actually starts making you who you are today. So thank you so much for taking time to share your experiences and share this beautiful aspect of a unified community where life was just one big festival. Am I right there?
Absolutely. Every day was a celebration because something or the other good was happening. And the good part is we all did it together. Like I said, I can't remember anything that we did in our own homes. So everything was a community thing and sharing, caring. I think that was where I learned the true meaning of that phrase.
Wonderful. I'm sure that all of our listeners are going to be really enriched by this experience. And I'm sure everyone somewhere would hope that at least in the future that children get to see this kind of a thing, because today, even if you're not in a campus, it would be so wonderful if we could build this kind of a sense of community. So thanks again for taking time with us, and we will hopefully have many more conversations going forward with different aspects of this kind of community living, Sandhya. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Payal. It's been an absolute pleasure reliving my memories with you and sharing those with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. रसोई के रहस्य का ये बहुत ही दिलचस्प एपिसोड बस यहाँ तक ही. हम सेलिब्रेट कर रहे थे एयरफोर्स कैंपस में खुशियाँ और द सेंस ऑफ कम्युनिटी. सो अंटिल द नेक्स्ट एपिसोड आपसे विदा लेते हुए नमस्कार.